Hello, my name is Siobhan Anderson-Judkins. I am a graduate student at Northern Vermont University. This following presentation is a critical reading of the book Time to Talk When You Need to Know About Your Child's Speech and Language Development. Before we get in, let's do a brief overview of the book. The book is split into two sections: language development, which is where I focused the majority of my research this semester on. Language development happens in 5 states: hearing, then speech, to language, to then fluency, to literacy. The second part of the book dove into bilingualism, disorders that may cause delay in a child's language development, and support systems that are available to help those children. Let's dive into our first language stage, hearing. For all spoken languages, hearing is an essential skill. For sign and written languages, the ability to hear can benefit, however, it is not a requirement. In humans, ears start to develop pretty early on, around 3 weeks gestational age, which is roughly 1 week after conception. At 20 weeks gestational, the fetus can hear sounds coming from outside the womb. They won't be able to hear specific words due to the anatomic fluid. However, infant-directed speech, otherwise known as baby talk, tends to travel through the fluid better. An important understanding for educators and parents alike is that hearing is not the same as listening. Hearing is the ability to detect sounds, whereas listening is the process of interpreting what those sounds actually mean. Deafness is defined as the inability to hear sounds greater than or equal to 90 decibels. For context, normal human speech is typically around 60 decibels, and a motor psych is around 95. Here is a quick figure of the auditory nervous system. This is how our brains are processing the sounds. So this is how you are actually listening to my voice right now. Now let's move on to speech. Some people think that if you cannot hear, then you cannot produce any speech. This is not true because speech is not the same as language. Speech is the physical and motor movements required to produce sounds, whereas language is what the sounds mean. Someone who is deaf can still produce sounds like crying or babbling. Speech development grows as the child physically grows. Globally, children can master all the speech sounds required by their language, usually by ages 7 or 8. Physical disorders can cause speech delays. However, they are usually identified quickly and interventions are put in place to help correct these issues. These children typically will catch up to their peers by the start of preschool or kindergarten. Speech takes a while to develop. It will start from birth with involuntary sounds such as crying and burping. As newborns, babies' tongues take up roughly 90% of the space in their mouth. As they grow, their tongue will take up less space and they can start making vowel-like sounds such as cooing. Around 4 to 6 months old, babies start to realize they are making sounds. They will play around with the volume. Here's a video of my daughter at 4 months old. You can hear her voice change volume as she plays. Isn't she adorable? Anyways, around 6 to 9 months old, babies will start to mix vowel and consonant sounds together to babble, otherwise known as baby words. Starting around age 10 months, babies will start to talk. This jargon will make no sense to us, but to the babies, they will feel like they're having conversation. Many families with the multiples find that the babies will appear to understand each other while communicating.
Liliana. Hey, you.
Here, Liliana is demonstrating the jargon with her father.
Hey, you. Say hi to mommy.
Usually around the child's first birthday, they will utter their first word. According to Dr. MacRoy-Higgins, the first word is not mama or dada, as those are considered babbling.
Dada.
Thank you, Liliana. In actuality, these first words are more likely to be one-syllable words that are common in the child's native language. By the time the child is 18 to 24 months old, they are no longer using jargon but real words in their native language. The child may experience a vocabulary spurt where they learn new words in rapid succession. When a child is 2 years old, they'll start to use all the syllables in a word. Before, they may have removed some parts. By the time a child enters preschool, they may still struggle with some blended sounds, however, they'll be able to say all the vowels. Plus, people outside of the child's family will start to understand them. For children in elementary school, their speech will increase exponentially the more they interact with their peers. They will stop substituting sounds in their words, and they'll have the ability to say all the sounds required by their language. An example of substituting sounds in words.
Liliana, can you say uncle?
Uncle.
Oh my god.
As stated earlier, language is different from speech. Now we're going to dig into the context of comprehending communication. There are two milestone paths that develop alongside each other. Receptive involves listening to the language, where expressive is speaking the language to others. For the first year of life, a child is in a pre-linguistic period. After 1 year, the vocabulary growth is slow and overextension is common. Overextension in linguistics is when an application of a term is applied to too many references. For example, Liliana refers to all of her toys as dolls. Grammar and sentence structures start to develop between 18 and 24 months old. At their second birthday, a child might start having logical communication with their parents. I don't have a Liliana example for you, since she's only 15 months old. However, an example would be a child saying, "need shoes," when they want to go outside. A big step for children is when they can start asking questions. Vocabulary starts to build quickly when this happens. And when the child increases their vocabulary, parents will find that they just keep talking and talking. And around the beginning of elementary school, a child becomes able to understand figurative language. This helps with the building blocks towards fluency and literacy. Fluency starts around the age of 5 or 6 for most spoken and sign languages. This is when children stop stumbling or questioning their language and are no longer substituting sounds or words to express themselves. The final stage in language development is literacy. Literacy is the ability to use language in reading and writing, and this will start to develop after fluency is reached. As an educator, this was my most important takeaway from this book. If I have a student who is not fluent in English, I cannot teach them how to read or write in English. Most languages have a 4-step process to mastering literacy. They can be broken down into the following terms. Decoding is the ability to map the speech sounds to a letter and letter combinations to create a word. Word recognition is the ability to recognize and read words correctly and effortlessly. Practicing with sight words is a helpful tool for word recognition. Reading comprehension is the ability to understand what is being read. Many schools use a reading to learn models in the upper grades for students. Reading comprehension is necessary for a student to succeed. Reading fluency refers to the smoothness of reading. Mastering literacy has been linked to academic success. Unlike learning speech and language, literacy cannot be taught through informal instruction. Instead, children learn by direct instruction in letters and their sounds, spelling, vocabulary, and storytelling. These are all skills children need in order to read. The rest of the book focused on atypical language development. Since my semester's research has to do with typical language development, I did not much spend time critiquing these chapters, but I will go over each part briefly. Up first is bilingualism. Bilingualism means that an individual is fluent in 2 languages. There are 2 forms: balance, which means having an equal fluency between the 2 languages, and non-balance, which means one language is dominant over the other. For a person who can communicate in a second language but is not fluent, they are considered to be semi-proficient. Bilingualism in children can stem from different sources. In the United States, the 2 most common sources are parents who speak another language at home other than the local language, or parents who only speak one language pay for services to teach their child a second language. According to Dr. MacRoy-Higgins, there are 3 categories of disorders that could affect a child's language development. There are hearing, speech, and language. The types of supports one can use to help their child with a disorder depend on the severity and the individual child. But in general, one can talk to a child's doctor or an educator for testing. They can see a therapist, get an IEP set up as soon as possible. They can use hearing aids, but the biggest is using patience and love. Their child is probably much more frustrated than any of the adults are. I wanted to spend the semester learning about the typical language development in children up to their 3rd birthday. Through my research, I found that language development continues well into elementary school. Prior to the semester, I didn't even consider literacy to be a part of language development. After this discovery, I changed my project to include ages 3 through 8. However, I still feel like I have much to learn from an educator's standpoint. For this book, I do not believe it was written for educators or academics. However, as an educator, I feel that reading this book has benefited my future instruction. By using the typical language development model expressed in the book, I can help students who are learning English or experiencing language delays. Dr. MacRoy-Higgins mentions countless times the importance of talking with young children. As an advocate for childhood development, I cannot express this enough. My hope is that for those of you who are watching this presentation with children, that you will reflect on how much you talk with them. I know for myself, I've reflected a lot on the last 15 months of parenthood. For all of us educators, part of our job is helping the parents of our students understand their child's learning. My biggest critique of this book is the sources are not peer-reviewed material. One of the authors is a speech-language pathologist who works with infants, toddlers, and young children. I trust her expertise in this writing, however, I believe using more peer-reviewed sources would have made the information a bit stronger. I have only just started my master's degree program. Starting in a pandemic is rather unusual, but it does give me a pretty unique topic for my thesis. I want to look at the overall effects that might happen to a child's development. My goal is to use the information I learned throughout the semester as a reference work to compare a child's typical development before and after COVID. I do not know for certain if I will use this book as a resource, but I may use it as a guiding point to start my own research. As a parent, I feel that I better understand my daughter as she is growing. I have to admit, I really enjoyed reading about speech development and then getting to watch Liliana reach each milestone. As a future educator in elementary school, I may have students who have younger siblings. I think I will hold on to this book as a way to help those parents who are concerned about their child's language. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a pleasant day.